For over a decade, people have been looking into how they can use the brain in tandem with technology to help those with various types of paralysis. In April of this year, we finally got a look at new prosthetic technology that brings us one step closer to that. We'll be covering what's special about this new tech and much more in today's video. First up, the BCI and James Johnson. The BCI, or brain-computer interface, isn't new technology on its own. It began its use in clinical trials back in 2018 at the California Institute of Technology, where one of the patients was James Johnson. Johnson had been in an accident that resulted in a broken neck, leaving him being almost completely paralyzed from the shoulders down. It's sadly ironic considering Johnson was a carer for people with paralysis for decades before he had his accident. In his own words, he'd felt a deep depression that made him feel like it had nothing left to offer or do. But that's when his rehabilitation team directed him towards the researchers at Caltech, who offered him the chance to participate in the BCI clinical trial. The introduction of the BCI involved neurosurgery to implant 2 grids of electrodes into his neural cortex. The electrodes recorded the signals produced when his neurons fired, and the technology and algorithms that the researchers produced served to decode those patterns of signals as thoughts and intentions. Those thoughts were then translated into movement of digital cursors or prosthetics. Next, the process and what's possible. Making, adjusting, and then using such a system isn't an easy task. When Johnson opted for the trial, he knew that the BCI would take years to understand and hundreds of hours of training to fully get a grip of. Just like learning any other skills, you need to put in the time to understand how everything connects. But that didn't deter Johnson. The first time he used the BCI, he was quite adept at making a cursor move on a digital screen just by thinking about doing so. It wasn't a return to form for Johnson, but he still saw the potential waiting to be realized. Since those early days, Johnson learned how to control a robotic arm, use Photoshop, play first-person video games, and also drive a simulated car in a virtual environment, something he's been eagerly awaiting to do in the real world. While driving that simulated car, he was able to not only alter the speeds at which he drove, but also able to quickly react to hazards on the virtual roads. Johnson is one of 35 individuals that have had a BCI implanted in their brains for a long term. As of yet, only a handful of laboratories are conducting research into this technology, but their numbers are steadily increasing. As the years go on, the range of devices that can be used in tandem with the BCI also increases. Just last year, scientists were able to allow an individual to use a robotic arm via a BCI that sent sensory feedbacks directly to his brain, meaning one can not only have their motor skills returned, but perhaps also their sense of touch. Another amazing development was a prosthetic speech device that allowed someone that could no longer speak due to a stroke do so. And now for how far we've come. At the moment, the majority of such BCIs are produced by a single company, known as BlackRock Neurotech, a medical device developer in Utah. But strides made in the field of neurotech have led to a surge in commercial interest in BCIs, which means more funding is available to progress research into it. Notably, back in 2016, tech entrepreneur Elon Musk founded his own BCI company known as Neuralink, with the intention of bringing together humans and computers like never before. The company has raised around $400 million to date. It's funny to think all this began back in 2004, when a stabbing victim was given one of the first BCI implants. 2 years after that initial implantation, the man demonstrated how the BCI could be used to move a cursor on a screen just by thinking about it, as James Johnson did when he first got his implant. The paper that this demonstration spawned would be the center of a suite of trials collectively known as BrainGate, which, as we've seen, has only grown in complexity and potential. The initial demonstrations of what the BCI could do were slow and imprecise, but it showed the efficacy of the technology and that someone suffering from paralysis might one day be able to substitute their lost functions. Lastly, mind to motor. People suffering from paralysis are perfect patients for neurotechnology because there's a direct need and a somewhat clear direction of where to go with the tech. However, there are different ways that one could go about bringing bringing back motor independence for someone with paralysis. That, of course, depends on the exact condition of the individual patient. If muscles are intact and the only reason one can't control them is because of a spinal cord injury, the BCI could simply work with bypass tech. The approach here is somewhat simpler than prosthetic technology. If you can connect electrodes to the affected muscles that can stimulate them and connect the electrodes to the BCI, you could bypass the injury entirely. In 2017, one such patient with a spinal cord injury regained precise movement of his arms through this method. He was able to do complex tasks like drinking coffee and feeding himself. This, of course, took a lot of practice, and the individual initially found it hard just to move his arm from one point to another. The other option is to use prosthetic and robotic arms. Instead of stimulating muscles in a limb, the BCI would be directly tethered to the internal circuitry of a prosthetic arm. Some might see a problem here with one's sense of touch being lost or left unreplaced. However, scientists have been hard at work to revive that sense of touch through the use of pressure sensors embedded in the prosthetics that are connected to electrodes implanted in the part of the brain responsible for decoding touch. It's not a one-to-one replacement of natural touch, but it worked well enough to reduce the time it took for testers to pick up objects. It's only a matter of time before this technology moves beyond simply making advanced hand movements and moving digital assets around. The hope is that one day we might be able to finally make the lame walk again, those without touch to feel, and those without a voice to speak their mind with ease. Next, in other news, what a BCI might feel like. Card79 is a design firm that helped in constructing an external earlobe device for Neuralink as well as a surgical robot. In a recent interview with the firm's founder, Mark Wilson got acquainted with some of the procedures and devices used in the implantation of the BCI. For starters, he was shown 3 different sized drill bits and asked which he was the most comfortable having drilled into his head. It's a bizarre question that might even be a little terrifying for most people, but it's something that many might soon be considering as a standard procedure. Card79 also produced a few videos to get people acquainted with what it might be like when over-the-ear brain-reading devices become more widespread. It's not what you expect, though. There isn't a depiction of some sci-fi utopia or anything like that. Instead, it's a fairly realistic take on another piece of new technology that people will take time struggling to get used to. In one of the videos, the device allows a user to interact with an entity that allows quick access to information and entertainment. It also allows the users to quickly construct 3-dimensional models on a computer in mere seconds by just thinking about which buttons and tools he wants to use. But the video also shows a dark side to this BCI future, one that is marred by notifications and advertising administered straight to your brain. It's clear that the firm is aware of the dark side of the technology, and though it shows how humanity can thrive using it, it also shows how we might be restricted by it. And now, Neuralink horrors. It's no secret that Neuralink uses animals for testing their implants, but it's only recently been found out that their testing has resulted in a number of animal deaths since their creation in 2016. Earlier in the year, Neuralink confirmed that at least 23 macaque monkeys had died from trauma of experimentation or via euthanization. Apart from animal rights violence, there are also concerns from professionals that removing implants might be dangerous. So, if something goes wrong, you might not be able to rectify the situation safely. Finally, can Neuralink cure tinnitus? Tinnitus is a problem that plagues a good many individuals around the world. Recently, Elon Musk claimed that his Neuralink implant could potentially cure the condition within the next 5 years. These claims might sound grandiose, but ear implants have long been used to curtail issues with hearing. However, it remains to be seen whether Musk's claims hold water, or if he's just trying to hype up his products again. That's a wrap for today's video. Are you scared or excited about the BCI revolution? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.